Okay, we're going to move right along, and we're going to go look at the fifth identification mark. We just got through showing that the papacy claims to forgive sins and that it claims to be God, and they don't deny it. They don't deny it. The fifth identification is that it would receive a deadly wound which should heal, then the entire world would follow him. We're talking about the beast. You can find this in Revelation chapter 13, verse 3. The papacy was dealt what appeared to be a death blow when in 1798 Napoleon's general Berthier took the Pope captive, and the Pope died in exile, which we can find in The Modern Papacy by Joseph Rickaby in Lectures on the History of Religion, Volume 3, Lecture 24, page 1. Now this comes from the London Catholic Truth Society from 1910. Half of Europe thought that the papacy had ended with this event. God, however, was on record that the wound would be healed and that the influence of the papacy would grow till all the world followed her leading. Now, in our past meetings, we told you that, like we just said here, that the Pope or the papacy received this deadly wound February 15th, 1798. And that was when it received this deadly wound. The deadly wound was healed in 1920 when Mussolini gave back or restored the power back to the Vatican, which reinstated the Pope or the papacy. That meaning the deadly wound was healed, according to the book of Revelation 13. Even a novice recognizes today that the papacy is, in many ways, the most influential power on earth. Did you know that over 1 billion people follow the Pope? Even the papacy is its own country. It is the smallest country on earth, but nonetheless, they declare to be their own independent, sovereign government power. And with each trip of the Pope, the papacy's influence and power increases. Multiplied billions from all over the world look to the papacy today as the only hope for world unity, love, peace, and decency, precisely as God predicted. So again, the papacy fits this identification mark. Now, we're going to get into our next identification mark. My cameraman is going to pause once again, and he's going to set up on our next illustration to help better understand the number of the man. Okay, we're going to get into our sixth identification mark. And as you can see right up here on this chart, we have it wrote down here for you. But what you got to understand is, as we get into this identification mark, we have to go by according to when the Bible was written. If the Bible was written, the letters, I should say, of the Bible were written back in Roman times, and whenever you counted back in those days, you used Roman numerals. So, the sixth identification mark claims that the beast would have the mystic number of a man, 666, according to Revelation chapter 13, verse 18. And I want people to remember that as you are looking at Revelation chapter 13 and you're reading verse 18, that it says that it is a number of a man. A man, not multiple men, not groups of men, but one man. So remember that. Revelation chapter 13 verses 17 and 18 says to count the number of the beast name. The beast we found in the book of Daniel chapter 7 verse 23 represents a kingdom. So at every kingdom there is a leader or a king, and that its number, that it is a number of a man. The man we think of when the papacy is mentioned is the Pope. The Pope is the leader of them all. What is the Pope's name? One of the Pope's official titles is Vicar of the Son of God, which we can find in our Sunday Visitor on April 18, 1915, in answers to readers' questions. Now, Vicar of the Son of God, which in Latin is Vicarius Filii Dei. Often newspaper articles, when referring to the Pope as Vicar of Christ, will enclose the words and quotation marks because they are a translation of his title or name. The book of Revelation is saying that the Roman numeral value of the letters of his name will equal 666. Now, if you were to add up Vicarius Filii Dei, according to the Roman numerals, we all know the V equals 5, I equals 1, and you can go forward. C equals 100. If you were to add Vicarius up, it comes to 112. If you add Filii up, it comes to 53. Di, you add it up, it comes to 501. If you were to take these three numbers and add them up, you get the number of the man, which is 666. It is a number of a man. And at the head of the Catholic Roman religion is, of course, as the world knows, is the Pope. The Pope has on one of his hats, it actually says Vicar of the Son of God or Vicarius Filii Dei. This is a worldwide, heavy, powerful movement that the Pope has. And if you add up his name, his title, we're talking about the title of his name, just like when we want to recognize the seal of God, you have to recognize the Creator, his title, what he did. Just like that, you need to picture and recognize the title of the beast, the number of the man. And the man, in this sense, is the Pope. If you add his name up, it is Vicarius Filii Dei, 112, 53, 501. Add them up, you get 666, which according to the book of Revelation, chapter 13, verse 18, it fits. It is the number of a man. So the papacy fits the 6th point. Okay, moving on to the 7th identification mark. We told you that there's 8 identification marks that would be representing or identifying the beast of Revelation chapter 13, verses 1 through 18. The 7th identification would be that it would be a religious power and that it is involved in worship. You can find in Revelation chapter 13, verses 5 and 8. This power is not a secular government, but is involved in spiritual matters. The word worship is used 4 times in Revelation chapter 13. The chapter is about false worship, and again, the papacy fits the identification point. The eighth identification point is that it would make war with and persecute the saints, according to the book of Revelation chapter 13, verse 7. It is common knowledge that the papacy did, in fact, persecute and destroy Christians, especially during the peak of its period of control, during the Middle Ages, which we all like to look back and call it the Dark Ages. And that ran from 538 AD to 1798 AD. The total is 1,260 years. Many historians say that more than 50 million people died for their faith during this period of Great Tribulation. Is history repeating itself? Yes, it is. Hitler did it. Now ISIS is doing it. The church felt it was doing God a favor in stamping out heresy, but the fact remains that it did persecute and destroy. Many modern Catholics disapprove of these persecutions. The papacy fits this point as well. There may be two sides to some questions, but there is only one side here. The beast of Revelation chapter 13, verses 1 through 8 and verse 18 represents the papacy. And this power has a mark that you don't want to receive. Now, the reason why we're pointing this out is because God has a true church. In order for there to be a true church, Satan is going to have a false church. What other government or power in this world deals with worship? There's only one. What power has a kingdom had the power to persecute and kill people for 1,260 years? What kingdom received a deadly wound? The Roman papacy. What kingdom had its deadly wound healed? If you research history, historical facts in the earth, about the earth's history and about the powers that ruled, there's only one that possibly fits this. It's the Roman papacy. Now, there are many, many beautiful, sweet, loving Roman Catholic Christians who serve Jesus gladly and whom Jesus counts as his children. I'll give one of the examples was Pope John Paul II. Pope John Paul II himself, he was a good, warm, gracious, courageous person who loved God. This meeting here tonight is not an attack upon our Christian Catholic friends. However, it is an attack upon the devil, who is responsible for the entire miserable affair. It is true, however, that God himself has told us that this system has a mark which we dare not receive. Sincere Protestants, Catholics, Jews, and the unchurched will all be anxious to discover what this mark is so they can avoid receiving it. Thank God that he has, in the book of Revelation, uncovered Satan's ugly plans to destroy us all. And we're going to get to that. So, We found 8 identification marks that pinpoints the papacy, the power of the papacy. I'm not pointing out to the good, God-fearing people that are Catholics. I'm talking about the power that is behind the throne, so to speak. Now let's move along in our study. We're going to go to question 4. The beast mark of authority. Question 4. Since we have now positively identified the beast as the papacy, let's permit the papacy to tell us what its mark is. Let's go and find out what their mark is. The papacy speaks for itself. One day a man picked up Peter Gehrman's Convert's Catechism of Catholic Doctrine and read the following on page 50. Question: which is the Sabbath day? Answer: Saturday is the Sabbath day. Question: why do we observe Sunday instead of Saturday? Answer: we observe Sunday instead of Saturday because the Catholic Church transferred the solemnity from Saturday to Sunday. Now this comes from the Convert's Catechism of Catholic Doctrine, page 50. Look it up. Historical facts. The papacy claims that they changed God's law. Now, if you look in the book of Daniel, in the Bible, the Word of God, if you look at Daniel chapter 7, verse 25, this little horn power will have the power to think, to change times and laws. Is that what the papacy did? They claim it. The man was dumbfounded and supposed there must be some mistake. So he wrote a letter to the then famous James Cardinal Gibbons of Baltimore and asked if the Catholic Church did indeed change the day of worship from Saturday to Sunday. The Cardinal replied, and this is a quote, "Of course, the Catholic Church claims that the change was her act, and the act is a mark of her ecclesiastical power and authority in religious matters." Now I want to stop right here real quick. I want to go back to this quote. I want you to recognize that there's a symbol in here. Cardinal Gibbons quoted saying, "Of course the Catholic Church claims that the change was her act." He's calling the Catholic Church a woman. And if you remember in our past studies, we told you that in the book of Revelation there are 2 women. In our last study, on March 25th, we discovered that there was a woman, according to Revelation chapter 12, verse 1, that John saw a woman in heaven, clothed with the sun, standing on the moon, having 12 stars. And she had a crown. The moon represented the Old Testament. Her clothing wrapped with the sun represented Jesus Christ. The woman represented the true church. That's one of the women identified in the book of Revelation. The second one, Cardinal Gibbons identifies as the Catholic Church. He flat out calls it her act in his quote. He says, "Of course the Catholic Church claims that the change was her act, and the act is a mark of her ecclesiastical power and authority in religious matters. I'm not making this up. This is actually documented. This is in the Catholic Catechism. Anyone can look it up. Notice also the following words from the Catholic Record of London, Ontario, and Canada on September 1st, 1923. Sunday is our mark of authority. The church is above the Bible, and this transference of Sabbath observance is proof of that fact. They're not denying it. This is straight from the Catholic Record, September 1st, 1923. They admit that they changed the holy day from Saturday, the Sabbath, to Sunday. They claim that their religion is above the Bible. And they claim that their transfer of the Sabbath is proof of that fact. Notice this from A Doctrinal Catechism by Stephen Keenan. Question: have you any other way of proving that the church has power to institute festivals of precept? Answer: had she, notice they're calling the church she, a woman, had she not such power, she could not have done that in which all modern religionists agree with her. She could not have substituted the observance of Sunday, the first day of the week, for the observance of Saturday, the seventh day, a change for which there is no scriptural authority. So who changed the day of worship from Saturday to Sunday? Did God do it or did man do it? Man did it. The Catholics admit it. It's in their Catholic doctrines. This one comes from A Doctrinal Catechism by Stephen Keenan. Look it up. The papacy claims that it changed the day of worship from Saturday to Sunday, and that Sunday or Sunday keeping is its mark of authority and power. God's mark or sign of power is Sabbath and Sabbath keeping, and the beast sign of or mark of power is Sunday and Sunday keeping. Now, before we go into our lesson any more further, there's only one religion in the world that is recognized worldwide that has a day of worship. There's only one religion that declares Sunday the holy day. They claim that they are above the Bible. They claim that they have the authority to change God's laws. This religion is the only religion that claims to be able to do this. It is the Roman Catholic Church. And at the head of the church is the Pope. The Pope claims to be the vicar of Christ. He claims to be Jesus Christ on earth. He is disguised by the flesh of man. He's hidden by the flesh, yes.
Now, there's a difference between Roman Catholics and what we just call Catholics here in the United States. Right?
The majority of Catholics follow the Pope. I will go with that. The majority of Catholics follow the Pope. If the Pope declares a new thing, it is passed down worldwide to all Catholic churches, and they are instructed to follow that. Whatever the Pope tells them, they are held liable to follow. So there's only one religion that teaches Sunday worship. It claims to be the mother of all churches, the head of all the churches. This goes with the book of Revelation chapter 17, where it talks about the whore who sits on the seven mountains. She's dressed in scarlet. And she holds a golden cup in her hand. Matter of fact, let's look at this real quick. Revelation chapter 17, because this goes right with it. Revelation chapter 17, verse 3. This is John the Revelator speaking. He was taken in vision. So he carried me away in the spirit into the wilderness, and I saw a woman sit upon a scarlet-colored beast, full of names of blasphemy, having 7 heads and 10 horns. And the woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet-colored, and decked with gold and precious stones and pearls, having a golden cup in her hand, full of abominations and filthiness of her fornication. The fornication mentioned in this is truth mixed with man's teachings, which is error. Truth mixed with error. Now I want to